I was only 17 when I learned how quickly the sea could decide whether you lived or died. I had signed on as a deckhand with Captain Philly, a fisherman out of Rock Harbor on Cape Cod. I heard you could make some good money fishing, and I wanted to try my hand at it. His nickname was Fair Weather Philly, but I didn't know why at the time. The Cassie Lou was a 60-foot, eastern-rigged, late 1800s fishing boat refitted with a winch to pull up the drag and powered by two Detroit diesel engines. The ship's rudder was operated by a gear and chain steering system connected to the ship's wheel in the pilot house. She was an old girl, to be sure.
We'd been out deep sea fishing for sea scallops for days with clear weather, and the sea was smooth as glass. The ship's hold was full, couldn't hold any more product. We came into Plymouth Harbor, unloaded the sea scallops at the fish pier, then went into town for a few drinks. We slept on the boat that night. It was cold, damp, an old boat with a lot of creaks and leaks. That night, Captain checks the weather forecast for the next day. Late afternoon, he heard over the Marine Band radio. Small craft warning going into effect. Powerful storm developing in the mid-Atlantic. Moderate risk for gale force winds with gusts up to 45 knots, and rough seas up to 28 feet swells. Well, he says, there's a storm brewing, but we're going to head back to Wellfleet Harbor and beat it. So we left early in the morning, before sunrise, and headed across Cape Cod Bay to Wellfleet Harbor, which is basically directly across the water from Plymouth. About halfway there, it got really, really calm, eerie-like. Then out of nowhere, the winds picked up, and in no time at all, we had 20-foot seas, I'd say. Yeah, it was bad. Huge swells came out of nowhere, very quickly. And old Monty Richardson, Philly's father, and his brother, Dave, were coming across the bay behind us in a gas-powered boat with a Mercury inboard, outboard engine. Well, their fuel filter got clogged, and they stalled the engine in the heavy seas. For some reason, can't remember now, we had their spare fuel filter on board the Cassie Lou. We managed to maneuver close enough to their boat, and believe it or not, Fairweather Philly came out of the wheelhouse and tossed that filter to them. Damned if Dave didn't catch it. They were able to reinstall it on the engine and get that baby going again and get their boat mobile. Yeah, honest to God, I thought we were going to die because you get two boats close together and one of them is completely dead in the water. It has no power. You know what'll happen if you collide. Can you imagine two boats going up and down and back and forth? Unreal. What a fishing trip. You'd thought they'd have one on board on hand, but they didn't.
That's not the end of the story, by any means. Like I said, Philly's boat was old. It had metal turnbuckles with cables holding the gunnels together because they would move and creak, and you could watch the deck planks move. Yeah, it were an old boat indeed. An old wooden sloop from a long time ago that had been refitted with those diesel engines. 100-year-old boat, at least, dragging fish and scalloping. The fuel tank was a 250-gallon home heating oil tank, laid on its side on the stern of the boat with chains holding it in place. The sea was so rough, it was slamming from side to side. I was dead sure it was going to break through the side of the boat and snap a chain. Then we'd have no fuel and no engine power.
Honest to God, I thought we were going to die. I couldn't even believe it. We stayed in the wheelhouse being thrashed around like you wouldn't believe. We had a life raft, a 12-foot aluminum Starcraft skiff from Sears without a motor. It was strapped upside down on top of the wheelhouse with a couple of pieces of yellow polypropylene line. That thing was moving around all over the place, and it wouldn't have lasted 30 seconds if the boat went down. We had life vests, but no lights for the Coast Guard to see us, and the water's so cold, you'd be dead before they ever found you anyway. Back then, they didn't have Loron or any of the other stuff. It was all compass and, whatever which way the wind was blowing, basically. So there we are, Fairweather Philly fighting the wheel in heavy seas, and we're all huddled in the wheelhouse thinking we're going to go down.
And I'm thinking about the sprocket. See, Philly's steering wheel was attached to a sprocket with a chain, right? The chain went down to a shaft that moved the rudder. On other trips, in calm seas, more than a few times, the chain would jump the sprocket. One of us deckhands would have to jump into the hole right next to two Detroit 671 diesel engines, worrying about, it's pretty loud, you know. We'd have to put the chain back on the sprocket. If it jumped off now, we'd lose the rudder. Why it didn't come off in those heavy seas is a miracle.
I can tell you truthfully, I was scared for my life. I really was. You know, the heavy breathing, the panting, the oh my god, we're gonna die, that sort of thing going round and round in my head. But Fairweather Philly brought us into the harbor. It wasn't easy, because as you come in, the water is still rough. Not 20-foot seas anymore, but still hard to come in. The waves were roaring. And Philly brings us right into the dock. I can tell you, as soon as we got the boat tied up dockside, I got down on my hands and knees and kissed the pier.
I was only 17 and learned then and there, things can happen fast. Things can be completely out of your control. The worst things you can imagine happening can somehow, magically, not happen. Somehow or another, you're carried to safety and your life is saved. See, I learned you can be put through the worst, then you come into port, safe, and your life is changed. Your life is changed because it's been saved through no fault or action of your own. You are reprieved of certain death. And it doesn't really matter whether it's God or an unseen force because your life is changed forever. Now you know how precious it is. I recognized something at the age of 17 that might take another man a lifetime. And that is this. Sometimes a life isn't saved because the person knows what to do to get themselves out of trouble. It's saved by something else. That was the first storm at sea I ever lived through, but it wasn't the last.